welcome to Your Next Move. I am so excited to have you here. I would love for you to just introduce yourself, let us know who you are, and of course, about your book.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and talk to you. I feel like we couldn't even contain our excitement to get started before you hit record. But I have
Yes.
been a couples therapist. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and licensed mental health counselor, and I specialize in couples therapy. I've been doing this work for nearly 15 years. I am the author of the book, The Cost of Quiet: How to Have the Hard Conversations That Create Secure, Lasting Love, which is all about good communication in relationships, as we're going to dive into. I have a TEDx talk called Secrets of a Couples Therapist. And I've been featured in media outlets across the nation, from the New York Times to the Tamron Hall Show, talking about these topics. So it's very much near and dear to my heart and inspired by my own personal experience in a bad marriage that ended in divorce. I've now been happily remarried for 10 years, but I had to learn a lot of these lessons the hard way. And I wrote the book and do this work to try to help people who really care about their relationships not get stuck in the same places that I once did.
I absolutely love that. And right before we started recording, I shared with you this is my 1 year wedding anniversary on Saturday. And I'm also remarried as well. So it's all, I feel like when you've been divorced and you're remarried, there's pressure, internal and external, like, okay, if I'm gonna do this again, what we're going to do is get this right. Like we are
Yes.
going to get it right.
Yes.
Because divorce, I think we don't talk enough about all of the things that happen in a divorce. So when you go through it one time and you're like, oh, like I'm not, no, 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 I will not do this again. So I want to know, what is the professional or personal moment that made you realize that silence was the real relationship killer?
So I, looking back, quiet quit my first marriage. And, we know that
Mm.
expression, most of us, from COVID times, but it really applies to relationships too. Now, there are some cases where people feel trapped, they can't leave because of kids or finances. It's a very personal choice. But it's when we stop bringing our energy and our effort and our aliveness to the marriage. So I realized only in retrospect that I started to self silence because I thought, I never get a good response when I do bring something up. And I didn't realize that I didn't really know how to advocate for myself in a healthy way, and that I needed to express myself really regardless of my partner's responses. And it wasn't until I went to grad school, and even really until I was practicing, that I could see the full extent to which I had played a role in the demise of my marriage. I thought what most people
Mhm.
think, well, it's your fault. Not that I thought I was perfect, but I thought mostly it was my partner, his defensiveness, his dismissiveness, his emotional unavailability. And I think all those things were true. I will never know if it would have gone differently or if the marriage could have been saved, but I know I regret not doing my part and not trying.
I so appreciate you sharing that so transparently, and I see that in myself. I think every time I've been in a relationship and you feel like things aren't going well, you feel like you're not communicating well, you feel like it just doesn't feel good anymore. I can transparently say my toxic trait is that I kind of like go, I'm a Cancer. I'm not really even big into astrology, but I think some of those things work. I'm like, I definitely go back into my shell as a crab and I go into self preservation mode. It's like, and I almost prepare myself for the end because I've had some tumultuous endings and I don't want to go through that again. So I always go into, oh my gosh, this isn't working. I'm going to have to be by myself. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go back into my shell and I'm going to figure out how I can survive and be okay
Yep.
so that I don't crumble and I can maintain, especially now as an entrepreneur, I think too, it's even like the financial aspect. When you are sad and you are depressed and you are going through a breakup, you want to eat ice cream. I don't want to be on a sales call. I don't want to go make any
Totally.
money.
It's
I'm
so
like, so I
true.
go back even more.
Yeah,
It's
it's
hard.
it's self-protection, and there are different ways that people do this, but what you're describing is a version almost of the freeze response, which is from a survival perspective when we're preparing for, in relationships, right, the end, which feels like death.
Yeah.
Emotionally, this is our body going, okay, rejection is coming, abandonment is coming, the end is coming, all this pain is coming. And some people go out fighting and kicking and screaming. Some people run, right? They don't even they're
Mhm.
just ghosting, gone before you even know what happened. Some people just kind of
Yes.
hole up and they go numb. So there's so many different ways we do this. And I think when I look back, and I talk about this a lot in the book, at the beginning of the book, that I had what I call good girl-itis. And a lot of us
Yeah.
can relate to this. Now, I grew up in a very assertive, outspoken, I grew up in New York. My dad's a doctor. My mom's a lawyer. I'm half Irish, half Italian. I'm not quiet, okay? Like, I have opinions. I'm very vocal. But I would tend to self silence in the moments that really mattered because society infects us with this idea that we should put everyone else's needs first, make everybody else happy, especially at home with our family. And, that it's noble to be self sacrificing, that if we make waves, we'll be seen as difficult. And so I did all of that. And the few times I said something, it was kind of indirect. Sometimes I was passive aggressive, or I think what a lot of my clients think, well, he should know this is obvious, right? You're not picking up on what I'm throwing down, my indirect
Mhm.
signals. And I didn't really understand how to be assertive, and that my needs do matter, and that my voice deserved to be heard. And again, this is not just something we do to manage the other person's response. This is really something we have to do for ourselves as women. I mean, as men too, but I wrote the book for women because I'm a woman, and I was seeing the same thing in my office over and over again with so many of my clients, the same patterns. That when we have emotional suppression, we get sick, we become anxious and depressed, but it can also lead to risks of cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disorders, irritable bowel syndrome, even cancer. So, this idea of being the good girl and being nice and, oh, I'm fine, nothing to see here, or eventually we blow, right? Like I call it victim volcano. We've had it, we've had it, we've had
Mhm.
it. Then we're like, "Wah," and that lava pours out everywhere. There's another
Yes.
way, which is to be connected to yourself, to be clear, to be kind, to be direct. And if you don't get the response you're hoping for, at least you know you've done your side of the street and you can see what the relationship can and cannot offer you. That's kind of the
Oh my
overview.
goodness.
Yeah.
So I've never had this conversation before, and I don't even think I've even shared this on my own podcast, but I don't talk a lot about my own relationships and marriage and all of that because I feel like it took me a while to get it right.
Yeah.
And so much of what you said is what happened in my first marriage. I feel like I remember just sitting there like, okay, Kimberly, if you can just be good and do all the things. And if you could want less, need less, and just be good, like if you're just good and you just like turn off that you need these other things, then everything will be okay. And
That's
I
exactly what
remember
I
saying to
did,
myself, like,
Kim. I'm sorry to interrupt
yes,
you, but that's exactly
no,
what I tried to do.
exactly. And I remember saying, like, you know what, God would not have allowed me to get married for it to break down. And I tried to play that card and be like, okay, so if I'm just a good girl and just cook and clean and like go to work and come home and I'll be okay. And it was not. And when you talked about getting sick, so fun fact, my master's is in counseling. Yes, yes, in counseling. So I did all the internships, all the things, but I ended up saying the career route, but did all the mental health stuff and school counseling. And I remember I got so sick during the breakdown of the marriage. And a lot of folks didn't know me back then. Probably a lot of people listening didn't know me back then either. But I was so sick. I had bronchitis, but like couldn't test for it. Like I had like strep throat, but like never tested positive. I remember my doctor finally sent me to an immunologist. And he's like, well, tell me what's going on in your life. And I was like, okay. He's like, you're depressed. And I was like, okay, listen here, doc. Like, I have a master's in counseling. If I was depressed, I would be able to go to the DSM and check and see if I was actually depressed. And I most definitely was depressed. Most definitely. I hit almost everything on the DSM, but that's how it manifested because I was not speaking. It was at that point in the marriage where it was like we would go days, weeks without speaking to each
Mm,
other.
mm.
And I was just miserable. I wasn't eating, I couldn't keep food down. And I was just like, and I was like, no, I'm not depressed. I'm fine. I'm fine. But when I moved out, all of a sudden, all the symptoms started to go away. I started to feel better. And I could only imagine people who have stayed in that environment with the breakdown of a relationship when you talk about all the things it create in the body. I think there's so many, there's another book, what is it, like the body keeps score,
Yes.
all of
Bessel
those
van der Kolk.
phrases.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think relationships, I love the work that you do because one of the things I always tell my clients, with the relationship, who you have at home is like the biggest impact on your life. Good,
Absolutely.
bad, indifferent. And taking care of that home life is going to help you do all of the things. Now, I think about my marriage now, and I would say I am fueled by my husband to go and do all the great things.
Yes.
Um, so I have a question about avoidant behavior. We
Yeah.
switch gears for a second, but I'm telling all my business on this podcast.
I love it.
Uh, you talk about avoidant behavior, and I think a lot of people will be like, "Well, I'm not cold. I'm not distant. Like I just keep the peace. Like that's not me. What are you talking about?" So how do you help people recognize the avoidance in themselves
Yeah.
when it doesn't look like what we expect avoidance to look like?
It's a great question. It's a challenge because nobody comes into my office and says, you know what, we're here because we're avoidant. But it's the
Yes.
biggest thing I see as a couples therapist. That and what I the way I define it in the book that is scientifically accurate is avoidant behavior isn't always so quiet. That's one version that's technically quiet. I'm really using with my book, The Cost of Quiet. Quiet's really a euphemism for avoidance, for conflict avoidance and avoidant behavior. So sometimes it looks like blowing up and lashing out, or criticism and blame. Sometimes it looks like checking out, having an affair, or just getting so involved with your children that you're getting all your needs for connection met through them. There's so many different ways we avoid. And what I'm describing as avoidant and defining as avoidant is that all the things we do instead of connecting to ourselves, getting really honest about what emotions we're feeling, the messages those emotions send us about what we need emotionally, which is not always behavior change, it's often comfort and reassurance, these attachment
Mm.
pieces that we ignore. And I'm certainly happy to explain more about that. And coming forward to someone to say very clearly, this is what, when this happened, this is what I was feeling. Here's what I need. So that is the way relationships, healthy relationships, are supposed to go. That relationships are a series of ruptures. If we're close to someone, we live intimately with them, we are going to constantly step on each other's toes. We're going to trigger each other. Triggers don't have to be big trauma. They're just the little ways that you annoy the crap out of each other, or the old wounds we have inside that maybe are bigger triggers, right? You asked me 5 times to do the dishes and I feel criticized just like I did when I was a child, even though you said it nicely, right? It's all those things. So ruptures are normal, but we have to know how to repair, and that repair is healthy communication. And when we're not doing that, we're in some form of, I define 10 avoidant behaviors that are the most common I see in my office in the book. And almost everyone will find themselves on that list. Whenever couples say to me, oh, we never fight, you shouldn't be fighting in an unhealthy way, but we never disagree. Guess what? That's not good. You're not
That's not
talking.
healthy either.
No, you're not having the conversations that matter. And these conversations don't have to be long. When we know how to do them well, they can be short, and they're a real opportunity for growth and connection.
Oh, I love that. So, what would you say if there's someone listening right now who, like, I can even imagine myself, like back then when you feel like, oh my God, we are too far gone. It is nope, nope, nope. It is the beginning of the end. Mm-mm. Like I remember when I took my couples counseling class, there was a theorist, I believe it was John Gottman,
Yeah, yeah.
who talked. Yes, I have one of his books, and he talked about, I believe, I haven't read it in a while, but I believe, like he said, one of the biggest things that like the downfall is coming is when someone feels resentment because it's really hard to come back. Would you say when is it that we can turn it around when we're in a relationship? Like, even if you feel a little resentment, you feel really like, oh my God, like it would just be better to leave than stay. When can we turn it around? Versus, do you ever recommend in your work, like, you know what, like the breakdown is too far? Like, it's time that we work on, like, what does Gwyneth Paltrow say? Like, compassionate release or like conscious
Conscious
uncoupling?
uncoupling. Yes.
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 Like, when do we consciously uncouple versus like, no, 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 how can we get it back together and we can have a successful marriage?
Yeah. So, first of all, conscious uncoupling, the author of that book, Catherine Woodward Thomas, who Gwyneth never gives credit to, is wonderful. And she endorsed my book. So, I
I
think,
love that.
yes. And I think there is a time, not all relationships are meant to last. Sometimes there are so many reasons. And I think people project their own experiences, their own values. You don't know what's going on in somebody else's marriage unless you're in it, walking in their shoes. But as a
Oh my
therapist, I
goodness.
would never say to somebody, you need to end this or it's time to end this.
Mhm.
And what I really believe and have seen in 15 years is that if there's even 1 or 2% of these two people who are together that still want it and are both are willing to try, meaning they're willing to look at themselves, even if they're feeling really discouraged and like, I don't think
Mhm.
this can work, then if you want to do it and you're both willing, let's do it and see what happens. Because I've had times that I've privately thought in my head, this is not going to work. There's like no way. There's so much resentment, but it's turned around. So a lot of times it's not too late. Now, that I'm all for what John Gottman says. And in fact, not only is he a great therapist, I've met him, he's amazing. He and his wife, Julie, do wonderful work, but they're also the premier researchers on couples therapy. They've studied couples for more than 40 years in their love lab, brought them in, had them live in this apartment they created, stuck nodules on their bodies to measure their
Yeah.
physiological responses. So Gottman knows what he's talking about, and I quote him throughout my book because the research is really good. So resentment is the clue. Then we want to pay attention to it. If you're feeling resentful, it doesn't mean the marriage is doomed or the relationship is doomed, but it does mean something's got to change. When we're feeling resentful, it's really misdirected anger. It seems like we're angry at the other person, but really, resentment means that we've allowed something to happen that we're not okay with, and the responsibility lies with us. Resentment is one of the primary things that causes disease. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got to get curious. Okay, if I'm feeling resentment toward you, what am I allowing that I'm not okay with?
I've never heard that before. That is hard to hear.
I know.
If
Yeah.
but it's empowering
Yes.
because you can change it if it's about you. Because so many things in relationship you can't change because it's someone else there. But if it's a you problem, you can fix it.
Exactly. And what that means when I say turn the lens around and go, okay, what am I allowing that I'm not okay with? That you may have to come forward and communicate. You may have to set some boundaries. And sometimes this means, in the worst case, if you're not going to get your needs met, or if you do come forward in a way that's gentle and clear and assertive, that and the other person hears you and they don't change anything, okay, well, then you have information and you can make choices. But the problem is, people tend to go, oh, I can't say anything. It won't go well. They won't change. They already know. And then they fill up with resentment, which is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die. And I often also say, there's this siren song of avoidance where it will tell us these stories about why we shouldn't say anything. It won't go well. It will lead to an argument. But part of it is just that it's natural to fear. These conversations are hard, they're uncomfortable. Most of us didn't grow up doing them. Even I have all these trial attorneys and all these super assertive people at work, but then they cannot or don't speak up in the moments that count in their
Yes.
relationships. So we've got to go, all right, what am I allowing that I'm not okay with? And then we've got to really get clear. and come forward in a way that gives the other person the best chance possible to hear us and find out, are they going to be responsive to those needs or not?
Oh, I love that. It puts a lot of onus on the individual to help change the couple for the better, which I really, really love. I've gone through couples counseling in multiple relationships. My husband and I, we,
Me
we go to
too.
couples counseling whenever we feel like we need to tune up. Like I think couples counseling is something when you want a healthy marriage, like you can continuously go
I
just for a
agree.
little check-in, like a little tune up, a little, oh, a life change is happening. Let's prepare for it. And I think that I love when couples therapists even like separate the two couples, like we need to do some individual work and then we're going to bring you back together. And I think that we don't think about that enough about what is the ownership that you have to do work on, especially when it comes to responding, because it's also this back and forth in relationships. It's like if someone's trying really hard to be open and change, you have to be open and change to receiving it and not looking at the past like, well, last year they did it this way,
Yeah.
like I don't know if this is going to work now. Like you have to be open to it. So I'd love to hear,
Yes.
is there a practical tool that you share with your clients who have been silent and that's their default? What is something practical that someone listening today is like, all right, well, I listened to this podcast, I guess I should try and do something.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get the book, but what can I do today when I get home?
So start small. Look for something that bothers you, even just a little bit on a scale of 1 to 10. Maybe it's a 2 or 3, no more than a 4, right? Let's just say I'll make something, I'll pull something from my own life to give it an example. Like my husband, just the other day, the way he responded to me, his tone of voice was so short and snappy. It was just kind of nasty and it pissed me off. And those are the kind of moments, and I'm not saying everything has to be a federal case, but when you get
Yeah.
used to communicating about things, these things are repaired very, very quickly. So instead of going in my head, what a jerk, how dare he talk to me like that? But I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to get in a whole big fight, right? Maybe I don't say something that moment. And this is what I'm encouraging you to do: spend a minute and get curious about what you're feeling. Name, like, let's say your husband or your wife or your partner talk to you that way. Okay, wait a minute, I didn't like that, but let's get curious and see if we can name the emotions. That made me angry. It irritated me. But underneath that, I was hurt. I felt disrespected, right? And what do I need? In my case, with this example, I just need you to recognize that whatever is going on at work or whatever, like, hey, I have empathy, and don't take it out on me, because that hurts my feelings when you speak to me that way. So take something small like that, a moment that you would normally go, forget it, it's not worth it, and you have that little inner dialogue. I call it the negative partner
Hmm.
story. Like, he's a jerk, he takes out his work stress on me. Instead of all of that and swallowing it, process it first yourself, what you're feeling, what you need. Often it's just to be acknowledged and maybe have someone say, hey, I'm sorry I spoke to you that way. I didn't mean to. So in this case, I went to my husband, and this is what you can do after I processed it. And I said, hey, you kind of snapped at me before. That's how I heard it. We want to express it as neutrally as possible so people don't feel criticized and blamed. I heard your tone of voice. It did not feel good to me. I felt hurt. I felt disrespected. I don't know your
Yeah.
reasons, right? We don't want to project our story onto them. You're working too much, and you're not dealing with things at work, so you come home. All of that's going to guarantee somebody gets defensive. But instead, I could say, when you snapped at me a little bit earlier, that's how I heard it. It hurt my feelings. I felt disrespected. And I just want to bring it to you because this relationship's important to me. I want us to be good. And hopefully, that other person says, because you're presenting it in a way that isn't blaming and accusing, and you're vulnerable and honest, you're being assertive.
Hmm.
The other person says, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, I'm having a bad day. I'm really sorry. And then, you know what? Good, we're done. So start
Yes.
small, but when you do these things, process for yourself first, name your emotions. That helps you regulate your nervous system. Notice that you have a story about your partner in your mind, but hold that lightly. It feels true, but it's not the truth, and we don't want to project it. And then go to somebody and be very clear, be vulnerable about your feelings, and ask for what you need. In this case, I just wanted recognition and an apology. And then you know what? There's no resentment, because otherwise you're going to stack up layers of resentment, and then sometimes it is too late.
Yeah, I think I love that. I love the part, especially about the time. I know with my husband and I, my husband is extremely direct. He's direct at work, he's direct at home, he's direct with his friends. He's going to cut through to the chase and hit you right where it hurts. Like when he has a problem, one thing he's not going to do is hold his tongue. But what I've realized in being married to him, I always have to affirm to myself, I know you love me. I know you care about me. I know your intention is to never hurt me. But it takes him sometimes a second. We joke and call it like husband talk, that he needs like a second to realize, oh wait, I should have done husband talk. I should have been a little softer. So I know I generally wait. Sometimes I'll wait and I don't even have to correct it. I generally can wait a minute and he'll come back in an hour or maybe the next day and be like, yesterday I know. And he'll proactively come and apologize. I think that time space, I think in relationships, sometimes we expect the correction, like we want the correction immediately,
Right.
but the correction doesn't always happen immediately. And I think we also can't articulate ourselves in the moment when like someone just ripped the band-aid off and it stings. Whatever we say in that moment probably won't be the good thing. It won't be the calm thing or the rational thing.
Right. So this is why I suggest that you may need varying amounts of time depending on the person, the amount of trauma, the personality. But first of all, one of the things, and I give a whole process for how to do this well in the book, is to take a couple's time out or a pause. And part of the idea is that you process for yourself. But I want couples to be explicit about this because it creates safety to say, wait a minute, you can call it on yourself. I'm too activated to communicate right now.
Mhm.
I need some time. I'm going to come back once I'm ready. And we all have a responsibility, because you're bringing up a great point. And I don't know how it sounds, but it's wonderful to be direct. But what people miss about assertive communication, we've got passive, passive aggressive, aggressive,
Mhm.
and assertive. And assertiveness gets lost. People confuse it with aggressiveness. Assertive
Yes.
is when you're clear and you're direct, and we want to handle one issue at a time, not open Pandora's box and re-legislate the
Yep.
whole relationship. If we clear up this one thing safely, then maybe we choose together to talk about another incident. But let's do one thing at a time. Okay, but with assertiveness, the piece that people forget is you do have to be kind. It's husband talk, it's wife talk.
Yes.
Like it is, and sometimes we're not going to be, because we're human, and then we do exactly what your husband does. We come back and we repair and we say, hey, I'm sorry. The Italian in
Mhm.
me, you can see I talk with my hands. Even when I'm calm, I'm expressive. And that can
Yes.
sense, my husband's like German, he barely talks. He's very, whether he's excited or in a coma, you almost don't know the difference. Right? I'm the opposite. I'm like, I don't know if you won a lottery ticket or got fired. Me, I
Yes.
stub.
Either way, it's the
Yeah,
same.
it's the same. I stub my toe, and you would think like everyone I love died. So we're very different. So I have to be aware that I might not even think I'm that upset, but because of how expressive I am, I can send signals of danger unintentionally
Mhm.
to my husband. Or I can get frustrated and I'll roll my eyes, which is really bad. That's a signal of contempt. We do not want to roll
Yeah.
our eyes. I don't even know I'm doing it. So I've got to it's my responsibility to be aware of myself, that I have to advocate for myself, but I have to do it in a way that's soft, that's clear, that allows that other person to stay safely connected and engaged with me. And if I don't, then I got to pause, regulate, and come back and say, hey, I'm sorry for how I talked to you. My emotions got the best of me. Can I try again? And the studies show, all the Gottman research shows, that
Mhm.
healthy couples who last know how to repair. It's not that they don't argue, it's not that they
Yep.
behave perfectly all the time, but it's that they come back, they take accountability, and they acknowledge each other's feelings. And then we're left with no resentment.
I love that. So I have a follow-up question
Yeah.
for you because we've talked a lot about how like you separate, figure out your own thoughts,
Yep.
and then come together when everybody's calm. Is there ever a time period that you're like, no, that's too long? Like you
Yeah.
can't expect someone to wait this long to
Yes.
come back. Like you've got to speed up your processing because now like it's not okay.
Yeah. Oh my God, great question. Okay, so ideally, we want this to happen as soon as possible. What the research tells us is that physiologically, if you're in kind of survival mode, you're flooded, you're activated, even if it's not that big, right? Where you can't be calm and curious, and you're not in that adult self, you can't get back there in less than 20 minutes. It's just not
Got
physiologically
it.
possible.
Okay.
So ideally, I try to suggest to my couples 30 minutes to an hour because some people need more time. But what the research shows, and there are people legitimately, Kimberly, who there's a history of trauma, they really struggle to figure out their emotions. There are people who get so dysregulated and hijacked by parts of self that they can't come back until the next day. And that's okay too. The research tells us we really don't want to go longer than 24 hours. But what
Okay.
makes the difference is that couples, and I go through again this whole process in the book because it's such a game changer, but that couples come up with based on their individual needs and personality and style an agreed upon amount of time for checking back in. So let's say we decide, you and I are married, and we decide it's going to be 2 hours. You need a little longer. I like 30 minutes. I'm more anxiously attached. You're more of a
Mhm.
withdrawer. You're more avoidant. Okay, we agree on 2 hours. We call a timeout. If you call it, and you go off for 2 hours, it's your job to come back at the 2 hours. Now, if you're not ready, you still come back and check in. And you just say, hey, it's been 2 hours. I'm checking back in. But you know what? I realize I'm really still dysregulated. I think I need more time before I can have the conversation. So, what you've done from an attachment perspective is you haven't let that person left them hanging out there on a limb by themselves, which feels like abandonment. But you've
Yes.
also identified in your body what you're capable of doing and not doing. And you're not going to, the idea is that this timeout process is you and your partner protecting the relationship from reactivity. So we just don't want to have the conversation if it's going to be in survival mode. We want to have the conversation when it's two regulated adults.
I absolutely love that. Because I think I love things being very practical. Like we don't need to go more than 24 hours like this because
Yeah.
I think for someone like me, I feel like the longer someone takes to come back, the more I get into self-preservation mode.
Yes.
It's like, no, 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 I have to fix this by myself.
Yeah.
I need to regulate my own emotions, my own life, my own whatever. And I'm going to come back to like, how can Kimberly be okay? And people
Me
learn
too.
to regulate on their own and never come back
Me
as a
too.
couple. And then that's when you have I wish I should have read my couples counseling books before I came here because I don't remember all the theories, but there was some theory about like this couple that had like everything and nothing rooms. And
Oh, I've never heard of that
and
one.
yes, I wish I could remember because I remember in the couples counseling class there was such a great methodology. It's like they had rooms where like they were together, and then they called them nothing rooms, where it's like if the person was in the room, you ignored them, like they needed their time. And as the couple and the relationship like moved forward, they created more and more nothing spaces,
Mm,
so that they just didn't communicate anymore. And I always think about that. And I'm like, that's what couples end up doing
yeah.
sometimes, where it's like, okay, we're just gonna and in the back, you have this box of all your dirty laundry, of all the resentment, all the arguments that never got resolved, and you're over it, but you're not really over it. And that's how those blow ups happen, I think, where someone blows up at you and they're not blowing up because you didn't load the dishwasher last night and now there's no forks and knives. They're blowing up for the 50 other things that have happened over the past
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And you don't understand why it's so charged. It's like, no, because you haven't talked about anything.
Exactly. It accumulates just like a basket of dirty laundry. And this is also where the game changer is saying, hey, I need more time, but I'm coming back. I mean, you have to come back and repair. The mistake people make so ubiquitously is, okay, we're charged, our buttons are pushed. I said things I didn't mean. You took off. We never repaired, right? We just let it go. And eventually we got over it and we moved down and we're calm again. And we can't even really remember what we fought about. So who wants to get into all that again? And then before you know it, your whole house is dirty laundry. So it's really, really, really important to come back. And I'm like you, like what you're describing, those are survival protective responses. Mine is to flee. And I'll go in a bad argument with my husband because I want to repair right away. The longer I
Same.
go, I'm like looking at apartments online to rent because I'm getting a divorce. Like that is my
Yeah.
automatic. I'm alone in the world. I should have known it was never
Mhm.
safe to love anybody, and I'm out of here.
Yeah. It's all catastrophic. It's like, nope, it's fine. It's fine. I've always wanted to live over here anyways. Let me go get a high rise.
Yes. And so, what I also tell people is that, our mind writes really negative stories. They're based on those big emotions we feel. It's usually worst case scenario. There was just a series on Netflix. I don't know if you saw it, called Something Very Bad is Going to Happen. Yeah, it's
No.
like I think it's in the top 10 still. It's like a horror show about marriage. It was fun and campy. But basically this is what our mind tells us, right? It's the worst. I'm going to get divorced. You're just hijacked. The prefrontal cortex of your brain is no longer online, and this is why it's so important to repair as soon as we can. But if you can't shift into that state where you're calm and curious, you've got to wait and have the conversation when you can. But you can also tell your partner, hey, I'm still upset. I'm jumbled up in my thoughts. I'm not clear yet, but I'm coming back, right? And that will soothe both people a lot. We have this thing called co-regulation, where our nervous
Mhm.
systems are designed to calm down twice as fast with each other as we can on our own. Now, many of us have been left alone our whole lives. No one comforted us even in childhood. So we, like you
Mhm.
said, we've learned to regulate alone, but we are designed as human beings for touch, for eye contact, for proximity, for hugs from a safe, reliable other. So get to that as soon as you can.
I love it. I love it. Colette, I could talk to you all day long. So I'm trying to condense. I feel like I have one last
Yeah,
question
tell
for
me,
you.
tell me.
So I do a lot of work with high achieving professional women. I talk a lot about visibility, using your voice, advocating for yourself. And what I find fascinating is that a lot of women who struggle speaking up at work are often the same women who struggle speaking up at home or have severe communication issues in relationship, married or not. Sometimes it's why they haven't been able to get into a relationship because of these communication issues. So I'd love to hear your take on that connection and definitely have a nice word for these women, these high achieving women who are thriving, but sometimes not thriving in this aspect as well.
Oh my God, it's so true. And I think there are the women who struggle in their relationships at home and they struggle to speak up and advocate for themselves at work. And then I have all these women that are super successful in advocating at work and still don't do it in the relationships because of all that conditioning, the good girl-itis at home. And because the more a relationship matters, the more that it's at stake, the harder it can be. So I think this is, again, really starting small, but getting in touch with yourself, your inner child. And if you don't like that language, I know before I became a therapist, I would have thought, ew, that's so hokey. But it is really true that the little girl you once were is still inside of you. And the adult you've become is totally capable of communicating. But we get hijacked and we get pushed back into that little girl who's scared in these moments that something very bad is going to happen if we use our voice. Our brain's job is to remember all the times we tried and it didn't go well. So take a minute, take a couple breaths, and really get reconnected to your adult self. Give yourself a power statement about the strong, independent woman you are and that your voice deserves to be heard. and get really clear on what you feel and what you want to say. No blame. It should really not be about that other person. Take ownership of it by focusing on yourself. And you're going to be really surprised that even though it feels super uncomfortable, about 2 seconds in, you're going to find your confidence and your mojo. And when it goes most of the time so much better than what we fear in anticipation, you're going to then want to do it again and again. And it's like a muscle that builds. I still get nervous sometimes for some of these conversations, and I've been working on myself and working with people on this for a long time. But I do it because I know I deserve it, and it's my commitment to myself, and it's gotten so much easier. Just like going to the gym, you can lift stronger and stronger weights the more you do it. So
Mhm.
what I would say is give it a try. The results itself will be so good and so motivating. You'll feel so empowered and proud of yourself and relieved that you said what's true, that you're going to want to do it again and again.
I love that. Oh my gosh. This book just feels like permission to hit the reset button in our relationships.
Yes.
Like, we don't need to pretend that everything is fine. We don't need to pretend that everything is perfect. And the more authentic we are, the more we communicate and talk about what our true needs are, the happier that we're going to be in relationship. So tell the people, where can we find the Cost of Quiet? Where can we find you? Where can we connect with you? Because we clearly need to. We're going to keep talking to you.
Yes, please do. Please do. I love to hear from people. So you can find me on Instagram at ColetteJaneFehr.com. I'm really active there. I'm also on TikTok. I don't know that one as well, but I'm there. My website, ColetteJaneFehr.com. Colette has one L and Fehr is Fehr. The Cost of Quiet, my book, is available there, but also wherever books are sold. Or, of course, you can go to thecostofquiet.com. And I have a great Substack called Secrets from a Therapist, where I write an article every week on relationship dynamics, and I offer lots of valuable content for free. So if you're on Substack, you can subscribe for free and get lots of good tidbits along these lines as well.
Oh, I love that. Everyone's on Substack these days. I feel like I might
Yeah.
have to get over there.
Yeah, I
I love
started
it.
a year ago and I really enjoy it. It's like it seems like the last non-toxic platform in the digital space. We'll see. I'm sure it'll get ruined eventually.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Thank you so much, Colette, for being here. And as always, to all the listeners, may your next move be your very best move.